Welcome to Critical Thinking Required, hosted by LBW. Our goal is simple. We want to challenge you to think differently about finance and business. Join us and start the journey today. Welcome to Critical Thinking Required. You're with your hosts, myself, Tim Bickmore, my colleague, Dan Weiss, and today we are going to get to interview the L in LBW that is Nathaniel Leach, which I'm excited for. Dan and I were jokingly talking about that this may take 10 minutes. It could take 30 minutes, just depends on how rambunctious Nathaniel wants to get. So
I thought about getting some more chocolate milk, but I don't know that I'd have time.
You should, Dan. I'm just gonna stretch it out to spite you both.
he's gonna put some extra words. Not gonna be straightforward and to the point. We'll see. Dan, I believe that you are the one to start us off. So how about you get us started and let's get to know Nathaniel better.
Let's do this. Okay. Nathaniel, would you please state your full legal name for the record?
Nathaniel Martin Leach.
Now, I'm going to get this out of the way so people know, because you're probably going to hear this throughout the podcast, and this happened in Tim's interview where people found out that he is known as Scooter, more commonly known. Nathaniel, you'll hear us call him Fanny. Don't call him Nate or Nathan. It happens more than not, yet people still do it. So
Well, to clarify, if I may, both Nate and Nathan are frowned upon by my mother. I'm more frowned on the Nathan. Don't really Nate. I'm fine with Nate. It was very helpful when I was in my younger days. I would go to clubs. Yeah, that's right. I went to clubs. I did. Yeah, I know. And it was easier to say in answer to the question, "Hey, what's your name?" When they're screaming over the music. Nate, my name's Nate. Instead of saying, "I'm Nathaniel," it just made it difficult.
Just hearing you call yourself Nate, it's like chalk to my ears these days. Like I don't even. It is Nathaniel to me. It's Fanny or Nathaniel. Nate is just doesn't. It's not you. It's just not you.
And then Fanny is really reserved for my friends and family. It's typically how it's worked out. So most people call me Nathaniel.
all right, moving on. Where were you born?
San Antonio, Texas.
That's great. And how about if anyone saw our client appreciation video that we put out, you would have seen a segment. By the way, all those segments had some real life inside jokes to it that some people may have caught, some or not. But there was a segment, Nathaniel, where you were being considered by us to be a robot. So we talk about this from time to time about you being a robot. What would you say you are misunderstood the most about?
Okay, so first off, I am not actually a robot. Let's make that clear right out of the chute. I'm all human. Sorry to disappoint. Apart from, I mean, I guess I got some metal in me, I guess, if you want to get technical. But
don't give us
human.
more material, man. It's not worth it for you.
No, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But in terms of being misunderstood, so people think that I'm a robot or I'm mechanical, and so by being a robot, that means that you're binary. You can only think black and white. Well, that's not true. I have the ability to see gray. I want to just put that out there, despite what some people may believe. Some people in my past, I see both sides of the equation.
I love that we now do these things by video. This is definitely some fun stuff here. What would you say, Fanny, you wanted to be when you grew up?
I had some ideas linked to. So I love history. It's the degree that I got, a bachelor's in history. And I thought it would be something to do with history. So I loved British history as an example. I loved learning the kings and queens of England. I could, at one point, I could probably still do it maybe if I really tried. I could recite every king and queen of England from 1066 when William the Conqueror, William the First, to from the Norman conquest to the present. I could probably still do it if I wanted to. We're not going to do that though. So I loved learning about that time in history. So I asked around. I asked my parents, what did that equate to? What could somebody do with a history degree? And it kind of landed pretty much on political science or a librarian. So I first thought, oh, political science, that sounds interesting. What does that mean? Then I found out that has to do with you pretty much like a political scientist, where you have to like figure out what's going on in a country's government structure and do stuff with elections, and you have to deal with politicians. Well, as soon as I found out I'd have to deal with politicians, it was out. And then the librarian, I thought about that. That sounded interesting. I love the idea of just being in a room with books all day. That was very intriguing to me. But then I thought more about it, and it just didn't strike all the chords for me. So that's kind of where it ended up. I mean, my father was a surgeon. So from a very young age, people would always ask me, do you want to be a surgeon like your father? So of course, my nature, I would naturally be the contrarian and say no. So eventually that became the truth. I didn't want to become a surgeon. I saw my dad do surgery before when he was still practicing. It was actually kind of cool. To this day, I mean, there were some aspects of it which I did not like. Like when I walked in and I saw a completely naked man on the table, and there was a catheter coming out of his penis.
That's where that comes from.
That was it, man. That was a no-go from there. I was out. I mean, I had my father was in the cleaning his hands, washing his hands in preparation for surgery. And I walked over to where he was, and I said, I need to sit down. So I pulled out there was a stool there. So I pulled out the stool and I put my head between my legs. And I was like, oh, no, I can't. I need a minute here. It was terrible. So terrible. But there was there were cool aspects about it. I mean, the part that I especially enjoyed was just like, they gave me a stool to sit on or stand on, and I could see I could see the man's, my dad, he sawed open the chest with a laser. It was done with a laser. And then he, he used the laser, I think, for the skin. And then he used a saw, I think, for the rib cage. And then he just splayed that sucker open. He just cracked that sucker open. But at the end, you have to make sure that there's no there's no blockages, I think is the correct term, or there's no air bubbles in the heart. Like, you have to make sure that the heart is functioning correctly. And so in order to dissipate this risk, you have to take the rib cage. So he took the rib cage in his hands and he shook it. He just shook that sucker. And that was so cool. But the catheter turned me off. I was done.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
You struggle about talking about things down there today. So I never knew
to
that
this day.
The source. That's the source.
Fun fact. Okay, so I'm going to allude back to a prior question here about the robot piece, like where I got some metal in me. This isn't bad. But I do have a mesh.
We'll edit it if we have to.
I had a hernia. So they did laparoscopic surgery, and they inserted a mesh to stop the hernia from coming out. So when I went to the surgeon who was going to be performing this, and she proceeded to explain the procedure to me, she started to draw it on the paper that you sit on. I passed out because she was talking about cutting me open, inserting this camera in, and then inserting this mesh seal over my hernia. And I was out. I passed out. Small little mini panic attack, and I was out. So
thanks for sharing that, Nathaniel. What would you say?
I am human.
You are human. Yes, it is actually true. What? Well, what did you study at Kalamazoo, where Nathaniel went to college, and what? How is it relevant? How was it relevant then, and how is it relevant now?
So I clearly already answered this question. So I had a bachelor's in history. But what you didn't know was it was with a concentration in medieval history. Bam.
Oh, I did not know that actually.
In Western Europe, yeah. So how is it relevant then and how is it relevant now? So relevant then, it was because I loved history. That's how it was relevant. How it's relevant now? Oh, there's so many parallels to what I do now. So my job is portfolio management, right? Well, before I get to the portfolio management, I have to do the analysis. So that's where history really comes into play, because with history, the history that you learn before college, that's just the facts. That's just this happened in 1060. William I conquered England in 1066. That's high school history. That's a fact. But when you get to college, you then learn about, okay, that is a fact, but then what happened? How did that happen? What went into William I conquering England? What was the backstory on that? What was his roots? Like, how did he come to think that he could get away with conquering England? It wasn't that just that he decided to take some of his buddies, his local crew that goes to the pub and drinks at night and they share and swap stories. No, he had to get support from X and Y, and he had to amass these men. He had to pay for it. Where did he get the money from? What was his family tree that led him to think that he actually had a claim? What was going on over in England to make it such that he was able to take over England? When he took over England, what happened? How did he actually manage to maintain control and solidify his rule? What went into that? And that's the stuff that really got me excited. So when you think about it, all of that stuff I just mentioned, it's exactly what I do to this day when studying companies to invest in, be it public or private. I'm finding out, okay, how is this company started? What does this company do? How resilient is this company's business model? Who's in charge? Is the person in charge have an owner operator type like mentality? What is the return on equity? What is the return on invested capital? How has their capital allocation history been? And then at the very end, I ask, what do I think this is worth? And what am I buying it at? And then if what I think it's worth is greater than what it's trading at, depending on that margin of safety that we always like to talk about, then we buy it or we pass on it. There's just so much that goes into history that can be applied to what I do today.
That's actually a very good answer, and I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm kind of excited to ask this next question because I'm a fellow liberal arts nerd like yourself. Outside of your history degree, obviously, I think it was very impactful. What else in college do you find relevant to who you are now?
I think it's more of I think a better way of phrasing the question would be to ask, what else in college did you find that you realized that you couldn't do that is relevant to what you do today?
You inverted the question.
Yeah. So
of course you did.
That.
Of course you did.
So that led me to think like, okay, so I took you have to take, the general classes, like to get general credits and such. So in high school, I was relatively decent in chemistry and math. I really loved algebra, for example. And so I said, okay, so I'll try chemistry and see where that goes at college. Boy, was that a mistake. Oh, man. I thought I knew stuff. I didn't know nothing. So chemistry was out. Math, Hell no. No way, no friggin' how.
Calculus is a little different than algebra.
Oh, I hate calculus. I hate it. Makes no sense to me. And then I went, so like Tim, there was an economics degree at my school, and that was it for the business. There was no accounting degree. There was no separate. It was just under economics. So I tried. I thought, okay, I'll try the economics path. Maybe I'll go that way. Now that would be equivalent to a business degree, and I'll see where that goes. It didn't click for me when it was stated that people are rational. That to me didn't click because, well, first of all, I knew I wasn't rational at all times. I'm emotional just like everybody else. To the robot point, I have emotions. So that never quite clicked for me. And then and from there it was just a matter of I actually did philosophy too, a couple classes, and then sociology. I love sociology. I just didn't do too well in the class, but the whole concept really fascinated me, and to this day does. And then philosophy was also very interesting, but then they just kind of gravitated more towards actual liberal arts, which was history for me, and it just kind of, that's how I went into it.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that you took some of those classes. Philosophy, yeah. You got the true liberal arts experience, though. You got to go and figure out what you really were passionate about, which is nice.
Yep.
Some people know, some of our listeners may know, some people may not. But if you're watching this on the top left, if you're in my point of view, you see a picture of a gentleman in a Marine outfit.
Yeah.
That is Nathaniel. Nathaniel was a Marine, and I will say thank you for your service, as we always do. We appreciate that. But a lot of people usually, when we say that you are a Marine, they ask, Nathaniel's a Marine? So why did you?
Can we get a close up on that picture and make sure that's
I actually get that a lot. What you want me to bring this down?
Yeah. Let's bring that picture in. Let's make sure that's him.
It definitely is. You are so young in that picture. It's great. That is fantastic.
I was 23 years old. That was 12 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a great picture.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So for our listeners or viewers, why did you join the Marines? And I think the second question is also just as important, is how do you feel that experience shaped you today?
Oof. Okay. So why did I join the Marines? I had to think about this for a bit, because I didn't want to do one of those classic one-liners and then just leave it at that, because it's a lot more than one line or one word, in my opinion. So to me, it was an aggregation of factors. So we just talked about my history degree. What do you do with a history degree? Political scientist, librarian, history teacher. I was not going to be a history teacher. I would not be able, I don't have the emotional bandwidth to deal with children. I don't. And then the work that you would have to do to become like a history professor, I didn't want to do that. I knew that. I didn't want to do it. So that's one factor. I was trying to figure out, what do I want to do with this history degree? And I didn't really have an answer. So after I graduated, I thought about it for almost a year. And even before then, I had been thinking about joining the military, because this is where it goes into the number of factors. So I didn't agree with what was with us going into. Let me back up. So the World Trade Center, that, and 9/11, that really affected me. I was a junior year in high school, and that really did shape me to a certain degree. Seeing those, I still remember. It's like when I've asked my mother, where were you when Kennedy was shot? And she could tell you. She could tell me right anytime. It's the same thing for our generation. Where were you when the World Trade Center was attacked? I can tell you exactly where I was. I was in Spanish class, junior year. and it was early in the morning, and that really did affect me because it wasn't because I felt like it wasn't because I felt like we were being, I guess I would have to say that I didn't think that our response was well done. I don't think that Iraq or Afghanistan, the invasions of those countries, was right. But I did believe in supporting the troops. I think that in the U.S.'s history, Vietnam, a lot of the people who served in Vietnam were not treated right when they came back from the war, when people found out that they had served there. And it wasn't their fault that they were sent to Vietnam. That's stupid. It was it was politicians' fault for one. But those men and women chose to sign up, to sign away their lives, or they were drafted in some cases, drafted, signed up, and they gave up they potentially gave up their lives to go fight a war that turned out to be one of the greatest military losses in the U.S.'s history. And then you treat them like shit when they come back. That's not right. And I didn't want to see, personally, I didn't think we should repeat that in Iraq and Afghanistan. But I still felt that those men and women who served in the military should be supported in some fashion. And for me, I wanted to serve in some form. So that my first avenue was the military. I wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself. I didn't really have much experience being a team player. In my childhood, I wasn't really into sports as a kid. Turns out in retrospect, that's probably because of my seasonal allergies. I'm going to blame that on my parents for not figuring that out. I just figured that out this year, started taking allergy drugs, changed my life. Oh man, I look forward to going outside now. It's fun. I didn't enjoy it as a kid though. And then I was also kind of a loner growing up. So I didn't really have that many friends, and I just didn't really get into the sports game. So learning to be a team player I wanted to attain what I saw as a skill set. I also wanted to attain another unique skill set, which was learning about weaponry. I'd never shot an actual rifle before. I wanted to experience that. I wanted to see what that was like. I wanted to experience what it was like to be a part of a huge entity such as what turned out to be the Marines. And I also am a patriot. I strongly believe, I can't state this enough. I strongly believe that a country is only as strong as the people within it. If the people fail, the country fails, period. There is no other explanation. There is nobody else to blame. If the U.S. were to dissipate tomorrow, it would be our fault, nobody else's. It wouldn't be China, it wouldn't be Russia. So why did I choose the Marines specifically? My father was in the Air Force. My grandfather was in the Navy. My great-grandfather was in the Army. Nobody in my family had been in the Marines. So I thought I'd shake some things up. And plus...
Contrarian.
That's what I was going to say, Dan. Contrarian.
It's true. It's true. And then also I think that the Marines are the toughest in the military. Just saying. It's the truth. Army, you can go pound sand as far as I'm concerned.
We can get feedback on that for sure.
I am. We probably are.
My brother-in-law is typing as we speak, I bet.
Oh, and Ying, our editor, just said she's going to edit that part out. So
no, don't. Let's give him the heat, Ying. Keep it in.
Dan says we should keep it in, Ying. So how does it shape me today? First and foremost, it's actually yin. Yin is how it shapes me today.
For our
Yin
listeners, why is Ying so important to you?
Sorry. So Ying, our creative director, office manager, also is my wife. To be clear, it was not nepotism. I did not marry her when we started. I was already married to her, is what I'm trying to say. She was already in the door. All right. Ying is the first thing that I can think of when it comes to how did the Marine Corps shape me today, because that's how I met her. If I was not stationed in Quantico, Virginia, then I never would have met her, which is just crazy in my mind today. Plus learning the Corps had 3 core values, which was honor, courage, and commitment. I really did learn those characteristics, learn more about those characteristics, and I still exhibit them today. And then also for me personally, it was also discipline and integrity. And I think that the Marine Corps really helped to solidify what was already present within me, my core values, my principles that guide me to this day and will continue to guide me, helped solidify those into the person that I am today.
I think I would agree with a lot of that as well. And I mean, why you joined the Marines, I haven't heard you go into that in depth about it, which was really actually quite fascinating. Kind of fast forwarding to today, or let's say 5 years ago, what pushed you to start LBW?
This is pretty easy, actually. I thought we could do it better than the rest of our industry.
Nailed it.
Good answer. This one I am definitely interested to hear what you say. So you talked a lot about being a history major. You're a Marine. You seem to be a contrarian quite a bit.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
You should know better, Tim.
I stand corrected. I will take that correction. But what motivates you professionally? I hear a lot of commonalities or correlations between how you've kind of gone through, but what motivates you professionally? Why do what you do?
I'd say a 2-part answer. One, I think that we have developed an incredibly niched practice in what we can offer, ranging from estate planning, financial planning, to asset management. So for my particular realm, the asset management, investment management, whatever you want to call it, piece of the puzzle, I think what motivates me personally in my professional realm is the act of compounding wealth. And I want to make it clear that I'm not talking about compounding assets, I'm talking about compounding wealth, seeing wealth grow. And for us, the definition of wealth has always been, it's not just the quantitative, it's also the qualitative. And finding out what a client's definition of wealth is, that's what I want to see compound with time. It's not just the numbers, it's also the qualitative. Seeing that person find what makes them, what their definition of wealth is, and then seeing that grow as time goes on. And by grow, I mean seeing them realize, okay, what works? What do I want? It's not what the Joneses want. It's what do I want? What do I want for myself and my family? And then seeing that grow with time. That's what motivates me.
What are your hopes for LBW?
I guess it's pretty simple when you think about it. To become an enterprise and a going concern that outlasts us co-founders, so that it can continue to take care of our clients' wealth and their future generations. I think that most firms similar to ours are typically a lifestyle businesses. They don't survive past their founders. And I think that that's a real problem in our industry. I want to go beyond that. I want to last longer than that. There's several. There's my father. He taught me the value of hard work and discipline. Keep on going even when you hit the obstacles. And in some form or another, I always got that message from him. My mother, she loves me a great deal, and seeing that unconditional love, and she also instilled in me the concept, the values, the values of being incredibly grateful for what we have, because I was very fortunate. I had a very nice childhood. My family did not want for money when I was growing up. So I was very fortunate, and she and my father made very certain that my sister and I appreciated our privilege in life. And we never forgot that. My grandmother, my mother's mother, she was very active in social work in the 60s and 70s. She did many what I think are great things for women specifically. And then this is really more of a, if I could have one, I've never met him, but Charlie Munger, I think, is an incredible mentor to have from afar. I think he's one of the most brilliant and wise individuals in our lifetimes. I think that he has many valuable lessons to learn from. One of the ones that I think that still tugs on my heartstrings is when he tells the story of his first son who died of leukemia, and Charlie was going through a divorce at the time with his first wife, working throughout the day, spending the days also at his son's bedside as his son slowly died, because we didn't know enough about leukemia at that time. And after he was kicked out from visiting hours, he would wander the streets crying and miserable. But he uses that story as an example of, yeah, sometimes life sucks, but at a certain point, and everybody has a different point, you have to pick yourselves up and you have to cope with that. You have to move on. And I can easily relate to that for some periods of my life. For example, I was in boot camp to join the Marines. The typical time is 3 months. I didn't do it in 3 months. I did it in 6 months. And that wasn't because I was in the training 6 months. It was because 3 months I was training, but then there was another 3 months throughout that I was recovering from a heat stroke, and then also recovering from that hernia surgery. So you have to persevere. Like after I woke up from that heat stroke, I thought it was over. I thought I was done. I hadn't even started training yet formally. I thought I was out, but I took my time and I thought about it, and I kept on going. I think that there's a lot that Charlie Munger, my father, my mother, my grandparents, I think there's a lot of wisdom there that I'm very thankful for.
Good answer. What bothers you? I hear Tim and I talk about this a lot. We don't talk about it as much with you. What bothers you the most about our industry?
A lot. But I've got a couple of examples. Here are just a few that I jotted down. People are too afraid to deviate from the line. They're too afraid to think outside the box, to question the status quo, to ask, quote, dumb questions, end quote. I have a real problem with the prudent investor standard. I think that the prudent investor standard does not give enough weight to the value of concentration. I think that if you find something, a company or industry or academia, an academic chemistry, mathematics, whatever the case may be, and a circle of competence that you understand and understand it well, then follow that and learn as much as you can about it, and then rinse and repeat. Grow the circle of competence. And I think that with that mindset, you can go on to do many great things in our industry specifically. When it comes to investing, that can really be applied. But in today's world, diversification it's all the rage. And I think that that's a mistake. I think that if you understand something, you learn about it, you follow that passion, learn about it, learn as much about it as you can, you should do that. I think that will create value in some form or another.
Another question that we all answered. What would you say is the largest financial mistake a person can make? It ties right into the last question.
There's a lot, but pertaining more to
just one.
To
you could only do one.
Okay, I got it. Pertaining to my specific sphere that I'm in charge of at LBW, the biggest financial mistake a person can make is buy high and sell low.
Yes. Wonderful answer.
Simply put,
it's great. Hit that out of the park. But how do you view leadership, and what does it mean for you to be a leader?
Well, I actually want to take the second question first. If I'm being honest, I don't think I am I don't think I could be categorized as a leader. I think I'd be better. I think I'm better suited in an execution technical role. I am more of a support to the leader. So if the leader says, go do this, then I execute. And I'm very good at that. I think that I have I think that this particular relationship that we have, us three have, I think really helps to not only exploit that, but it also proves that I also work well within this environment, in that a small group working together, I think I excel in that kind of environment. If I were to be the leader of that group, I think that there would be some issues. So if I'd be honest about that. So how do I view leadership though? From what I have observed, to listen, it sounds simple, but it's really hard. I think there's also the characteristics of being humble, being cognizant of the person's time. They should always be respectful and humble of that person, no matter what their position in life. And you also have to be able to adapt. I think that adaptation is one of my weaknesses in most things. That also, I think, speaks to why I don't think I'm the typical leader, if you will.
You're a contrarian.
In many ways.
I like it. I like your answer. Those were very good. You know, I have some thoughts in my head about your answers to this next question, and I kind of like Dan's. I'm curious on how correct I am. But what is your greatest source of joy?
It's pretty easy. My wife, Ying.
Good answer. And I assume the individual who is going to edit this podcast is going to be very happy that you said that.
He's going to have it repeat like 3 or 4 times.
Yes.
Going to be on
a loop.
On a loop.
On a loop.
Yes.
My wife, Ying. My wife, Ying. My wife, Ying. My wife, Ying.
Similar to Dan and myself, I know you've been able to travel in your life thus far, and I'm only going to give you one place, and I am going to be a stickler on it because I also had to be. What is the most favorite place you've ever traveled to?
For me, the favorite place I've traveled to, I thought about this, and it would have to be New York City, and I'll tell you why. So New York, it's New York City because, okay, so to give you some backstory. So I grew up in a town that was 15,000 people outside of a slightly bigger town at 60,000 a city, I guess you'd technically call it, of 60,000 people. And my wife Ying grew up in Shanghai, China, like downtown Shanghai, China, we're talking about tens of millions, literally tens of millions of people. And so we come from two very different places, but at the same time, we share a lot of common principles, which was really awesome. It's in spades for me. But it was hard for me to become comfortable in a big city. It was just very foreign to me. There's just a lot of different things you have to get used to. And New York City, for me, was a favorite place because it was the first time that I thought that I could actually do this, that I could actually live in a city, because Ying feels more comfortable in those kinds of settings than I do. And New York City really made me feel like I could actually do that, because we've talked about, like, in our future, like when we retire, spending half the time in Shanghai. And it's taken me a while to get there, but New York City for me was the first time that I actually felt like I could actually do this. And to be able to share that with her really has made it the favorite place. In addition, of course, New York City is...
That was a great answer to the question right before about your greatest joy. Very well tied in. Favorite board game? Which one is your favorite?
Monopoly. It's Monopoly.
Oh.
I wasn't actually that good at it. I think that there was a lot of... Don't get excited, bud. Dan.
Will you play me?
I don't know, man. You are a ruthless son of a gun. You are. I don't know if I could take it, and I would probably lose.
And it would go for days. It'd go for days.
And I felt like there was
out, baby.
Yeah.
So I think this answer probably has changed with you over time, and I have a sneaking suspicion that it probably has changed since you've met your beautiful wife Ying. But what would your last meal be?
My mother's cow tongue.
No, not my choice.
Threw you for a loop there, didn't I?
You did. You got me out there. I wasn't expecting that.
No.
I mean, I've had some of Ying's dinners, and she's a great cook. So.
That should have been
fantastic
his answer.
No, she'll allow me this one, I'm pretty sure. My mother's cow tongue is...
Oh. All right. We'll let you have it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's your podcast. How does a person best help another? We've all answered this one too. What do you got?
Actively listening to what a person is telling you and then constructing a solution together and then carrying through with it. It's so simple. It's so hard to do, but it's the truth.
I think, Nathaniel, this next one might be the hardest question within this podcast for you to answer. What is the best book you have ever read?
It was actually pretty easy. It was. I know. It's a book called The Power of One.
What is that?
So it's a fictional book. It's about a young boy. It starts out as a young boy, and he just gets it. He's in South Africa, and this is, I think it was after the Boer War, Boer War. And I'm not quite clear on the history of how that transpired, but I think it went from Dutch to English or English to Dutch control. I can't remember which. And it's about this young boy. So racism, apartheid is rampant, of course. And he's a young white boy. And he gets it in his head that he wants to become the best boxer there ever was. And then it's the story of him attaining that goal. And he's just a scrappy little runt. but he works through all of these obstacles that come his way. He develops these incredible relationships with some kids that he grows up with, some older people who become his mentors in boxing and life. And I really liked it.
Put it on our list. How about, could you give us a favorite quote?
I can. So if I wanted to, I could. I'm going to say one individual in particular, and then one of my favorite quotes of his. So Charlie Munger. I think he's, again, incredible individual. And there's two quotes. So to be fair,
whoa.
You guys have been a little bit wishy-washy. Fine.
You get one.
Fine. My favorite quote is "Keep it simple."
Now, my favorite question for you, out of curiosity, how long does it take a person to get ready in the morning?
I learned long ago that I like to take my time. So it used to be, I've actually gotten it down. It used to be 2 hours and 45 minutes, but I have since gotten it down to about 2 hours because I like to take my time. I like to cook my breakfast in the morning, eggs, then go and take a nice shower. Then I'm ready for the day.
This is all okay under normal circumstances, but, and usually it is Tim and I, but sometimes Nathaniel too. We have clients and, in contexts all across the country. So it requires travel under normal circumstances. His routine's perfectly fine, unless you have to share a hotel room.
But it's not that bad. I'm the one who gets up early, not you.
You are very courteous about that, I will admit.
I say, how much time do you need to get ready?
You do.
What time are you planning on getting up? And then I backtrack it from there.
That's true. But you'd be damned if you dare walk in that room with shoes on.
It's nasty.
What subject of study fascinates you the most that is not directly related to the field of business? You can't use history either. That's unfair.
Oh, come on.
No, we know that. Come on. Show us something we don't know. Pick up something else.
Sociology. It's fun to think about. It's fun. It appeals to the contrarian nature that I have, which is making people uncomfortable in what I believe to be okay situations. Just as an example, you get into an elevator, it's full of people. What is the typical society dictate when you're in an elevator? You all face the front, you face the elevator door, right? Mm. Well, have you ever felt the urge to be the one next to the door, turn around and face everybody else?
No, because I'm not an a-hole.
I'm not a person.
Even Siri's jumping on that one.
That's a little bit. Sorry. That's fun. That's fun to me because it's extremely uncomfortable, not only for them, but also for me. But it forces you to interact. It forces you to get outside of your comfort zone. And I bet you money that there will always be at least one person who would be open to having a conversation in that elevator. And then from there, you can learn anything that you would never expose yourself to. That's very appealing to me.
You're a twisted man.
And what's funny, Nathaniel, is you may have found two business partners that would be the one that would strike up the conversation with you.
You're right.
Yeah.
So to finish this off, Nathaniel, last question for you. Why do you podcast?
Well, that's easy because Ying and you guys said I had to.
Yeah, that's the right answer. Yep.
Good answer.
Got that one. Yep. Okay. Tying a bow on this one and wrapping it up. I'm glad that we did this whole series of the three of us going through these questions. particularly for Nathaniel, because he doesn't really get out there very often. And so it's nice because I'll tell you, what you see with Nathaniel is clearly not what you get. Unless you have the privilege like Tim and I have, and Nathaniel does not keep a lot of friends. He really doesn't. He's very choosy about that, and I respect that. He's very true to himself. But if you can go one layer underneath the, hey, this guy is not what you see. He's exactly what you see. But what I mean by that is this dynamic dude is the first to show up. You know what you're going to get from him. He is definitely true to himself. He's going to get the job done, and I don't ever have to worry about that ever not being the case, whether it's from a personal standpoint or a professional standpoint. And I hope that people saw the first layer of this guy is clearly not what you think he is. And I hope they got to see a little glimpse of something that I know Tim and I have such a high just respect for, of take it one layer, and he is what you get. It's just not what you think.
You know, I had a feeling Dan was going to end with those kind of comments, and I'm just going to reemphasize it because it needs to be emphasized. Is when I first met Nathaniel, and I haven't known Nathaniel as long as Dan, there was a certain robot-like aura around him, or what I had been told. And to be very honest, I had to go to Dan and I had to say, Dan, from what I've been told, Nathaniel's nothing like that. Why is that the case? And we had to have a conversation about that specifically, because I'm like, he is nothing like the way people are telling me that he's like. And Dan's like, yeah, that's very true. So, and I'm being very serious about this. That's a very real story. And I think Dan's right. Nathaniel doesn't get to meet our clients as much, doesn't get to probably meet our listeners as much. And he's probably one of the more thoughtful and dynamic individuals that I've ever met. And sometimes not sometimes, all the time, he doesn't give himself enough credit for who he is. And I think the social ability, I think the intelligence, just being dynamic and as an individual, to push himself outside the box when he's uncomfortable. You just don't find very many people willing to push the limits of life in the way that Nathaniel does, and knowing some of his weaknesses where he doesn't really necessarily like to do it, but he does it anyways because he knows he wants to get better and to continue to grow. So you don't get to see that part of Nathaniel, and I think this podcast helped view that, show that, and emphasize it. So I was very happy to hear your answers so we can share the real Nathaniel, or the true Nathaniel, to our listeners.
I think that I'm very fortunate to have the people in my life that I do, my wife, my family, you guys, LBW. And I feel very fortunate in that regard. Very fortunate. And I think it was very serendipitous that we found each other in the circumstances that we did. And I'm very glad that it happened. And I'm glad that I hope people view this and they see that I do smile. I have a nice smile, I think. So I've been told. I do smile. I do have feelings. I do have emotions. And sometimes I am human.
And also, Nathaniel has a wonderful voice, but that might just be for another podcast.
You're very thoughtful.
Before we thank our guests, I do want to just a shameless plug and acknowledgement. We probably should have started with this, that we're proud of Nathaniel every day. And Nathaniel recently was selected by In Business Magazine for being executive of the year. I think one of 5 in the city of Madison that were selected for executive CFO of the year. And it just reminded me, as Tim was making his comments, that he just doesn't, those are things that, Nathaniel he's just doing what he does. So it's nice to see him recognized for that. And thank you, Nathaniel, for putting yourself in a vulnerable spot to answer these questions and allowing the audience to get to know you better. And thank you, audience, for tuning in and listening to the 3 of us think critically. Have a great night.
Thank you for taking the time to start your journey of thinking differently and listening to LBW talk about stuff they love. Until next time. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual on any specific security, on any specific broker-dealer or custodian. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments, broker-dealer, or custodian may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. As always, please remember investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own and do not reflect the opinion of Leach, Bickmore, and Weiss Wealth Management, LLC. Leach, Bickmore, and Weiss Wealth Management, LLC is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Leach, Bickmore, and Weiss Wealth Management, LLC and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advice may be rendered by Leach, Bickmore, and Weiss Wealth Management, LLC unless a client service agreement is in place.